Hey guys, Telomic here with D&B Academy, and today I just want to take a quick look at editing vocal samples, time stretching vocal samples to better fit with the tempo of your tune. So I've got this vocal sample here. Well, first of all, I've got this sort of tune that's sketched out, so I'll play that quickly. Fairly basic, and then I want to have this pre-drop vocal. So at the moment, and I think something might help carry that over. So I found this sample that I quite like.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
It's actually taken from my tune From the Sidelines, which is on my upcoming album. And I want to show you guys how I would approach getting this to fit in time. So there's a couple of things that you can do. The first one is that the actual original sample is 130 BPM. So I type in 130, line this up.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
And do it like that. It's also...
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
Do it like that, and that's fine. And for some samples that will always work, and it's a fairly kind of easy way to do it. But sometimes you'll find that, particularly with if you're using like house samples and things like that, that the vocal will just sound really sped up. Or if you're working with something that's a bit faster, it might sound too slow and things like that. There's a couple of other tricks that you can use to get stuff to fit that maybe isn't necessarily in tempo as such. So, and the tips I'm using are going to be Ableton specific, but would apply to other DAWs and their time stretching algorithms. Yeah, it's more the principle of it, but obviously the method I use is Ableton specific. So the first thing that I would do is, listening through to the sample, is work out where my key hit points are for that vocal. And what I mean by that is like where I want the downbeat to sit.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
So the he here is a downbeat, so I'm going to line that up with that beat there. So,
and he don't know.
And then the no is a downbeat there,
and he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
And the perfect is a downbeat. So we'll move that to the nearest downbeat.
And he don't know that you're perfect.
And then this one, maybe let's try there.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe. And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
Cool. So that one, if I try it on a downbeat, I was actually wrong. It doesn't really feel right.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
It kind of feels like it skips. But if I move that to the offbeat,
and he don't know that you're perfect, babe,
then it feels a bit more natural. So that's what I would consider step one. Again, this one will kind of line up with the nearest on-grid bit.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
And then I'll go through and tidy up. So we'll take this one, this first hit, and just move that on beat.
And he don't know that you're perfect.
That one.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
Cool. So that is now lined up on grid.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
And I would consider that fairly in time if I put this over the drums.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
I would say that perfect feels a bit off. Maybe it's that we need there.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe. And he don't know that you're perfect, babe. And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
It's a little bit of fine tuning that has to be done.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
Yeah, it doesn't quite feel right.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe. And he don't know that you're perfect, babe. And he don't know that you're perfect, babe. And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
Cool. We'll leave it there for now. So that I can move on to the next tip. But there's usually a little bit of sort of editing that needs to be done back and forth. To be honest, it probably works as is, and I'm being overly critical of it. But anyway, the next thing that I want to do is to move my sample to where I think it lines up with the tune. There's a few different ways that I do this. Sometimes I will have the last word line up with the start of the drop. So like this.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
Let's turn on our processing.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
Which can work well if you've got like a delay on that vocal, or moving that so it's a little bit earlier.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
But I think this one actually needs to sit a little bit earlier.
And he don't know that you're perfect, babe.
The one thing I'll need to make sure of when I'm dragging this around is that my downbeat hits. So this is the reference point I'm using because we decided that the he should be our downbeat, to make sure that is lining up with the beat on grid in Ableton. So, or whatever your DAW is. So here, if I have the full sample, I've obviously trimmed it down so that we've got one beat and then this. But sometimes you'll have to be more aware of where those downbeats are if your sample is like an odd length or has a weird start or whatever. So we'll make sure it's on the 3 and not like landing on a half. Yeah, so shift it around a little bit. Try maybe a bit earlier. So actually to me that works really well. So we've got that hit landing on the 2. And we can try that over the drums as well a little bit later on. If I take the drums that we've got and high pass that break as like a little phrase in the middle. I think that works. So yeah, quickly to recap, going through, listening to the sample without anything else, just soloed on its own at the original tempo and working out where our downbeats are landing and where our key vocal points are. Then going through, setting those and time stretching those to the grid to make sure that they then fit with our new tempo. So those downbeats are landing on downbeats on our grid at 170 or 175 or 4 or whatever BPM you're working at, rather than the original sample tempo. And then moving the sample around, making sure that those downbeats are landing on your downbeats on grid in your arrangement. So that when you've got like a vocal hit landing on the second beat of the bar or on a downbeat, that it is actually landing on downbeat in your project and not, off grid. And then it's sort of trial and error really, as to how you want it to sit. Different people, if I gave this to like 5 different producers, they'd all arrange it in a slightly different way. I don't think it matters too much, but it's a nice way to get creative with a sample and to kind of put your own stamp on it rather than just typing the tempo in and smacking it to your tempo. So for this one, it sounded fairly similar, but sometimes you'll have samples where it actually sounds drastically different doing it this method rather than doing it just by warping the tempo. So yeah, hope that makes sense. Any questions, let us know, and I'll see you in the next one.